Their Bernese mountain dog refused to let the baby sleep anywhere except directly beside him. They called it clingy. The pediatrician called it something else entirely. Rosie had been a calm dog her whole life. Unnervingly calm. The kind of calm that made first-time visitors think she was elderly, when in fact she was 4 and simply had the temperament of something that had already made peace with the world. She slept in the kitchen. She watched from doorways. She had opinions about nothing except the hour of her dinner and the location of her favorite fleece blanket. She had no history of sleeping beside the baby's bouncy seat. Not once, in the 8 months since baby Willa had come home, had Rosie positioned herself within 3 feet of the bouncy seat, the playmat, the floor gym. She was present in the room. She was always present in the room. She simply maintained a respectful distance, the way a professional maintains a respectful distance. On the 5th Wednesday in October, that changed. Willa had been fussy for 2 days. Not dramatically. Layla had been tracking it. 4 extra wakings the first night, 3 the second, clingier than usual at feeds. Referred a specific quality to the crying that was slightly different from the usual frequency, slightly higher, slightly shorter in its arcs. Layla was an occupational therapist with an extensive knowledge of infant sensory processing, and she had been monitoring this with the clinical detachment of someone trained to observe without overreading. She had not yet called the pediatrician. Babies had fussy days. Rosie moved into the living room on the 5th Wednesday without being invited. She crossed from the kitchen, walked to the bouncy seat, walked around it once, and lay down with her body pressed against the side of the bouncy seat frame. Not across the room, not in her usual doorway spot, against the frame. Willa was in the seat, fussing softly, and Rosie put her nose 3 inches from the seat opening and held it there. Layla noticed. She called Rosie's name. Rosie lifted her eyes and held position. Layla went back to what she was doing. Rosie didn't move. By bedtime, Rosie had not moved from beside the bouncy seat for 4 hours. She had followed it when Layla moved it to the kitchen for dinner. She had followed it back to the living room. She had not eaten her dinner at her usual time. She had not gone outside at her usual time. Layla's husband, Marcus, came home and saw Rosie pressed against the bouncy seat frame and stopped in the doorway. Why is she doing that? Layla shook her head. She's been there all afternoon. Referred, she won't leave it. Marcus crouched beside Rosie and looked at Willa in the seat. She looks fine. Rosie looked at him. Did not move. He sat on the couch with the expression of a person assembling available information. She never does this. Layla, I know. Marcus. She's acting like she's guarding it. Layla, I know. Neither of them said the next thing, which was, why? The second day, Rosie was beside the bouncy seat before Layla came downstairs. Third day, same. Willa's fussiness had not resolved. Layla took her temperature Thursday morning. 99.1 degrees. Low. Not alarming. She took it again Thursday afternoon. 99.8 degrees. Still below the call the doctor threshold she had memorized from the newborn paperwork. She called anyway. The nurse said if she's under 100.4 degrees and eating normally, watch and wait. Rosie did not watch and wait. Rosie pressed her nose to the bouncy seat opening and inhaled for 30 seconds at a time. And on the third day, she began doing something new. She would inhale from the seat, then go to Layla's feet, then return to the seat, then return to Layla's feet. A circuit. Back and forth. Layla watched this. She thought about it. She called the pediatrician's office at 8:07 Friday morning and said, "My dog has been stationed beside my baby for 3 days, and she won't leave her." I know that sounds unusual. The nurse who took the call had been a nurse for 22 years, and she said, "Bring her in." Dr. Amara Solis examined Willa for 12 minutes on the urinalysis, white blood cells, bacteria, urinary tract infection. In a nonverbal infant, a UTI produces no visible symptoms beyond fussiness and low-grade temperature, the kind that falls just below call the doctor threshold, until it progresses. It had been progressing for 3 days. Dr. Solis looked at the chart, looked at Layla. "You said the dog started doing this Wednesday?" Layla said yes. Dr. Solis looked at the chart again. That's likely when the bacteria began producing enough metabolic compounds to be detectable in the diaper area and on the baby's skin. She looked up. Something detected it before we did. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Bacterial infections produce specific volatile organic compounds as metabolic byproducts. In urinary tract infections, These compounds become detectable on skin and in the immediate surrounding environment before any human can identify odor or visible symptom, referred a dog's olfactory system. Operating at concentrations thousands of times below human threshold, registers these compounds as a chemical signal that doesn't belong. Rosie had spent 3 days sitting beside the source of a signal she had never smelled before. She had pressed her nose to the opening of the bouncy seat. She had come to Layla's feet with the only communication available to her. She had skipped dinner. She had not moved. Has your dog ever stayed beside your baby through a day that seemed normal, but turned out not to be? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Willow was on antibiotics by Friday afternoon. Her temperature returned to 98.6 degrees by Saturday. Willow's fussiness resolved completely by Sunday. On Sunday evening, Rosie got up from beside the bouncy seat and went to the kitchen and ate her dinner, which had been sitting untouched for 3 days. She drank her water, she went to her fleece blanket in the corner, and lay down and exhaled with the complete heavy exhale of a dog whose shift has ended. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Willa is 14 months now. She has had no further infections. Rosie has returned to her kitchen position, her doorway post, her respectful 3-foot professional distance. But some mornings, for reasons no one can quite explain, she will move to wherever Willa is and lie beside her for 20 minutes, nose slightly forward, reading the air. Then she will stand up and go back to the kitchen. Everything is fine. She knows. She checked. She just checks.